I'm Gary Stevenson, former trader and people's economist. This is Gary's Economics. Today we're going to talk about what the economy would look like if we fix wealth inequality. Okay, if you've watched my videos so far, you could be forgiven for coming away a little bit depressed, right? I made my money by betting that the economy would be broken forever, that it's going to get worse. I've explained in my other videos that if we don't do anything about wealth inequality, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Housing affordability is going to get worse. Ordinary people won't be able to afford houses. Wages will stagnate and it'll be difficult to get a good job. So I get a lot of videos from people saying, look, I like your videos, but they're making me feel bad about the future. And I don't want to do that. So what I want to explain is this idea that wealth inequality is killing the economy. It makes some bad predictions if we don't do anything about wealth inequality. But what it also does is open up the possibility that if we do something and we do change wealth inequality, we can make this economy work so much better for ordinary working people and families. Now imagine a different possibility. Imagine if rather than the rich owning all of the wealth in our society and the rest of us having to pay them to use it, imagine if the wealth was more equally distributed, so we all owned a little bit of the property and also the corporations and the land. This would mean that instead of ordinary working people paying a big chunk of their salaries to the rich every month, we would be paying those salaries to each other, and we'd also be receiving it from each other. This would mean we would all have a passive income every month that we could use to fund our lives. But not only that, if the money, instead of going to the super rich, is going to ordinary people, well, we know that ordinary people spend the money that they get as opposed to the rich who save it. That means that instead of the money going up to the rich to buy our houses, it will go between ordinary people who will then spend it again to drive each other's wages. Instead of that negative spiral of ordinary people getting poorer and house prices going up, you'd have a positive spiral of money going in between ordinary people, driving wages up every time it goes around. Now, that may sound unrealistic, but it's happened before. In the 20 years after the Second World War, in the 50s and 60s, when we had much higher taxes on the very rich, housing was much more affordable for ordinary people. You could buy a house for 2 to 3 times average income. That was 50 years ago, before the internet. If we were to have a much more equal distribution now, housing could be so much more affordable, wages could be so much higher, and we could have so many more options in how we live our lives. Most importantly, security would be much more affordable for ordinary people and families. Now, 100 years ago, there was an economist called John Maynard Keynes. He's one of my favorite historical economists, British of course, like all the best economists. And he said about 100 years ago that he expected his grandchildren would only work for 15 hours a week. Obviously, you'll see now that if you try and work for 15 hours a week, you're probably going to struggle to feed your family. So why was Keynes wrong? Keynes' idea was, over the next 100 years, technology would improve massively. That would mean that we could produce the same amount of goods and services with much less work. He thought that would mean that wages would go up and up and up, and ordinary people could afford to work less and less and live better lives. Why hasn't that happened? Well, some economists will tell you the reason that has happened is because people simply want more stuff, so they can't work for 15 hours a week because they want more stuff. I mean, those economists, like most economists, probably come from rich families, because if you don't come from a rich family and you try working for 15 hours a week, you'll probably realize you ain't going to get much stuff at all for that. So we can understand why Keynes was wrong if we understand the cases in which Keynes was right. Because there are some people in this society who don't even have to work 15-hour weeks. If you watch my last video, What is Wealth, you will have seen that Jeff Bezos, even if he doesn't work at all, will make $6 billion a year. And very wealthy families that have wealth of, say, £50 million, they don't have to work at all, and they can make £1 to £2 million income every year. So what we have created is a society where 95% of us have to work long hours just to get by. 4.9% of us don't have to work and can still live, and 0.1% of us get millions of pounds a year even if they don't get out of bed. So Keynes was right. We could all live working 15 hours a week, but instead we've chosen to give all the money to this small group of super wealthy families, while the rest of us have to fight to get them to pay our salaries. So look, that is the key message here, right? If you have a very wealth unequal society, even if you have great technology, all of that technology, as well as all of the land and the property, is going to be owned by the super rich. The super rich don't like to spend a lot of money. So we all need jobs, but all the wealth is owned by super rich people who have machines to do the work for them, and we need to convince them to spend money on us. If that's what we do, then it is inevitable. Wages will be low and housing will be unaffordable. But the key message is it does not have to be that way. When I talk about reducing wealth inequality, it's not just about making society fairer. It's about making the economy work for ordinary people. If we were to do that, wages could be massively higher, houses could be massively more affordable, and we could live Keynes' dream of being able to work 15 hours a week. But it doesn't just have to be working 15 hours a week. It would massively increase the options available to ordinary families. You know, maybe you do want to work a 100-hour week, but if you work a 100-hour week, you'd be able to get rich and you'd be able to live a life of luxury. And if you want to work fewer hours, you could spend more time with your family, more time with your kids. You could spend more time pursuing your hobbies. You could spend more time making videos about wealth inequality on YouTube. These would be options that are available to ordinary people rather than simply working all the hours of the day just to take care of your family. Look, my overarching message here is, things don't have to be this way. If we don't do anything, things are going to get worse. Wages will fall, housing will become more unaffordable, our kids' lives will be worse than our lives, ordinary people's finances will be insecure. We will live lives where we don't know whether our kids will be able to have financial security or not. But if we do something about wealth inequality, it's not simply about making this world fairer. It could massively transform the economy and the lives of our kids. It could give them the freedom to pursue their passions, the freedom to make money, the freedom to become rich, the freedom to have nice houses, the freedom to have secure families. This is the potential future we could have if we fix wealth inequality. So when I make my videos and I make my pessimistic predictions, that is what will happen only if we don't do anything. But if we do something, if we fix wealth inequality, that future of wealth and security for everyone could be there for us. But it's only going to happen if we make it happen. And if you want to help me do that, make sure to watch the next video, how we're going to make the economy change. You like? At the moment, these guys are profiting from a crisis that is going to keep our economy in the stump for 50 years. There is one other thing they can do with that massive amount of income. They can buy your mum's house.